Okay, so this is our real thoughts on The Cell. Yeah, sorry, I already told him what we were doing. No surprise on this one.
Well, it's kind of a surprise. We only talked about it like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, that is true. We're just looking through which one to do. We were like, we just did a review on Scooby-Doo. We kind of like just to do that now. So I'm like, The Cell. We put that up recently, so let's talk about that because that's an interesting movie to talk about.
Actually, you would be not surprised because I really fucking hate this movie.
And I remember when I first saw it.
No, you know what? I'm gonna let you finish. First, I'm gonna interrupt you.
It's deserved.
You dragged me to this fucking movie. It's another one that's infamous. And there's like a short list of maybe 10 films in my life that Doug has like dragged me to that I will never forgive him for. And this was another one of those. Like Spider-Man 3, you insisted was better than the first two. X-Men 3.
I didn't say that.
X-Men 3, one of the greatest films ever made. And
I like it.
Little Nicky, which you didn't like.
No. But I didn't see that one.
But
yeah, that was when Adam Sandler could make a good film, and we weren't
Little
sure.
Nicky,
so
which
we tried it. I was like, nope.
You didn't like at least, so I don't have to argue you on that. But you did drag me to see it, and we could have seen Red Planet, which would not have been a great movie, but would have been a lot fucking better than Little Nicky.
But at least we saw the worst. We saw like the worst of that year. We can say that.
I paid money to see it. My hard-earned money. And The Cell, this is another one that,
This one I saw, honestly, I'll be very honest, I saw this movie.
Because you were in your pretentious high school phase.
Kinda. Because it had, it got bad reviews, but then Ebert was praising the hell out of it. I'm like, but we knew he was kind of a sucker for eye candy. So we went and saw this movie, and, I came out, and I couldn't figure out, I'm like, was this... I couldn't put a fingerprint on it. I couldn't figure out what to classify it. So I kind of brought you along because I was like, well, it is visually really interesting, and kind of this big screen, and I couldn't place it anywhere.
What does it mean?
No, it was one of those things where I was like, I just kind of wanted a second opinion on. It's like, it's one of the few times where I'm like, I need to know what you think about it.
Second opinion. You're all so crazy.
It was one of those where it's just, I needed someone else to talk about just to help me kind of, I don't want to say form an opinion, but I just couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't form an opinion. That really was kind of it.
Don't worry, because I was there to form it for you. It stinks.
Well, so then you came out, you're just like, that sucked. And we just kind of talked about it for a bit, and I was still kind of a little open to it, but I knew you were right as well. And years went by, and then
he's rewriting this a bit. He had an actual picture of Tarsum in his room. As an altar, he gave it offerings of fruits and sweetmeats.
And so
I may have exaggerated.
Maybe a bit. It was just fruit, not meat. So this movie is seen by us again years later. Comes to think of this, and people are talking about it's a really good film. Really good, just fantastically. No, this has kind of a following. And I guess kind of the people kind of like the Eberts and stuff that, I don't want to say fell for it, but this film is not taking advantage.
Fell for it.
No, this film is not taking advantage of the setup that it has, and instead is trying to go very much for the shock value and the confusing, as I put it, ask me what it means value. I feel like, even though maybe the director's very nice, I don't know, I feel like there's kind of that egocentric-ness going on, where it's about, how do I make a style? How do I make you look at me and say, what's going on in his mind? And I know that because I was that person for several years. And that's exactly what I thought. I thought I wanted to make art, but I wanted people to look at me and say, what's going on in his mind? I want to analyze you. I just wanted the attention. So I'm not saying that's necessarily what's going on.
Some people never grow up.
But
I'll be nice.
But I think with this, I just get that from the whole time because I feel like there's a lot you could analyze with it, and I think of something, but not necessarily hammer it in either, and I think a good example is something like Silence of the Lambs. Now, that doesn't have to physically go inside a killer's mind, but we technically go inside two killers, one that's very articulate and can speak very well, and another who is just very kind of just, put the lotion in your skin, and he's
the more realistic serial killer, by the way.
He's the thug.
Buffalo Bill is definitely the more realistic.
Definitely, yeah.
I love Hannibal as a character, but he's more of a movie monster than a realistic serial killer.
He's like a Bond villain, but Buffalo Bill is one of those characters where it's like you're still going inside his mind and trying to figure out, and there's a lot of things going on, even though you visually don't show it, you know there is, and they talk about it. And they talk about just the right amount as well. So I feel like that's stuff that you could have done here, and I like the idea of, it seemed like it was doing a lot of show, don't tell, but, you know, even the telling was very obvious, and the showing was very obvious, except when it just cuts to random strange things that they really, really focus on for a while, and then be like, you know, the horse being cut in a million pieces and stuff, you know,
okay.
Figure that out, It's like, well, okay, I'm just sure some fucked up weird thing, and then Jennifer Lopez with like the cloth with Jesus's face on it, just be like, try to figure that, and you don't want to, and I think
it's symbolic of Jennifer Lopez believing she's bigger than Jesus.
and I think a big part of that, as I brought up in the review, is that we don't get to know D'Onofrio's character. We only get to know when we go inside the mind, but we don't know what this translates.
I know more about Wilson Fisk as a D'Onofrio character I ever did about... I don't even remember this guy's fucking name.
Yeah, no, neither do I. And yet, we're supposed to go inside his mind and say, oh, poor guy, but all we saw of him in the real world is him just looking at some dead women and just being like, oh, that gives me hard, and like nothing else.
Well, it was the most... okay, and this...
Even Buffalo Bill, I felt like he was like, when Jodie Foster asked him, yeah, sure, hold on, yeah.
Buffalo Bill
got what he was.
Socially awkward. He was an amalgamation of like 3 serial killers.
Yeah.
But it felt real. He was living this kind of scuzzy, slimy life in this, like, you know, kind of dirt poor house. He just reconfigured his basement. You know, his only real quirk, well, I mean, he's making a human skin suit, but his only real quirk is like the moths and stuff. You know, even Red Dragon, I felt Red Dragon was a little and Manhunter was a little overwrought with the serial killer's actions. I need the moonlight and you know, it was kind of crazy. But even then I felt like it was a little more grounded. I feel like post Silence of the Lambs, this was a huge problem for a while, where it's like every serial killer needs some sort of artistic sort of edge, and they're gonna be weird, and this guy's gonna like hang himself on various chains with the various, and it's so crazy insane that I'm just like, I just can't buy this for a second.
I feel like
this is just so beyond. I'm like, first off, where's he getting the fucking money to do all this? Where it just... Ugh.
Well, and on top of that, you know, I think there was something where this whole movie, this is why I think the movie really hasn't aged well, you know, on top of right after it came out, but even the visual style, with the exception of the costumes, because those are some of the best I've ever seen in my life. That's the same person who did, like, Bram Stoker's Dracula and stuff, this famous designer, forgetting the name.
The actual production design is good. But
here's the thing with the production design. I realized watching it years later. At the time, it was like, wow, fascinating, intriguing, but now... you kind of feel like you've seen it everywhere, like with Marilyn Manson, a lot of music videos. And not that there's anything wrong with music videos, but it's been overplayed, and suddenly you realize it was emblematic.
It was emblematic of its time. I mean, so it is dated, but I can't say that it was awful production design and the fact that there was no effort that went into it.
Oh, no, definitely.
But no, you're right, which is but that's what I'm saying. At that time, that was so in, like, serial killers have this weird, artistic inner mind, and it's super nice to see this shit on things like, you know, I'll flip on some random station, you'll get an episode of CSI where it's just like, this serial killer recreated his childhood home, like, right down to every last detail, and then imprisoned a woman in there, and then, like, did all these things, and ended up mummifying her, and then, like, took a piece of her skin, and then created a Mona Lisa out of it. And at some point, I'm just like, okay, like... just kill somebody. Like, just fucking kill somebody and just get your fucking sexual jollies and just be done. Like, it's so insanely, like, actually, overwrought.
I would love to see what you just described. I'm not gonna lie. Making the Mona Lisa.
I always see this on shows, and after a while, I'm just like, okay, I love Silence of the Lambs. but the impact they've had on, like, serial killer films, to me... that's one of the negatives about it.
Yeah,
it's just it's like they all fall under this, you know, mad, twisted genius, and I'm like, oh,
the
shut
artiste.
Up. Yeah.
And not to say those people aren't, I don't want to say artists or anything, but you know, that type of killer isn't out there. But there's a lot more of them in the movies, and we really seem to like.
And this guy to me was the ultimate cliche example of that. I can't think of a bigger.
All he's missing is the big vocabulary. I can't say vocabulary.
He needs a large, extensive vocabulary and references to like Shakespeare or something, but or like fucking Voltaire. Like that's it. Otherwise, like, it is the most cliched fucking serial killer I've ever seen of this type in a movie.
Well, and you brought up Daredevil with, the Kingpin, and I'm just thinking, like, because this is literally the guy that played two killers that have
I was
these
pissed too because I'm a
pasts.
huge Vincent D'Onofrio fan. So when I saw he was in this movie, I'm like, yes, this will be amazing. And then when I got out of the movie, I was like, no, that fucking sucked.
And I'm thinking, like, I felt like with Fisk, they really dived into his childhood and such, and this movie did too. But with Fisk, there is something about, you know what he becomes, you know what it leads to, and you have an idea what he's like. Where with this guy, you really don't. You just see inside his mind and all this stuff, but you don't know what it connects to outside of his actions, not who he is.
There was no step in between step A, get beat up as a child, step B, become monstrous, insane, genius, artistic serial killer. There was no explanation in between. Fisk, you feel like the background story informs you of how he becomes this character he is. That step was missing here. It's just literally just like, why did you do this? Oh, I got beat as a child. Okay, a lot of people get beat as a child. Where's the missing step? Like, just because you get beat as a child doesn't mean that you're going to become a serial killer. There's a series of things that happen in your life that lead from one point to another, and all of those other steps seem missing. It was just like, okay, he got beat as a child. I'm like, what? It just didn't inform me of anything about his character. And really my biggest problem with the film is it's just two separate things. One is a really shitty police procedural, like with Vince Vaughn, he ain't gonna stop himself, just chain smoking on like another cliche.
Yeah, all those cliches. Yeah,
we gotta stop him because he ain't gonna stop himself.
There's a million. Again, in the review, we point out all the plot holes of
and Vince
Vaughn,
by the way,
advanced technology is supposed to work. This great police force and all that shit.
And Vince Vaughn, one of the great comedic actors. And a dramatic actor I can never take seriously.
No, I can't.
I can't do it.
I'm sorry, sir. I cannot do it.
I love him in so many comedies. I think he's a great comedian. I just, whenever he's doing drama, no.
Yeah, I'm the same
So
way.
there's that one. So it's a shitty bad CSI film, and then on top of that, a really shitty postmodern art display that you pass through in the museum and go like, wow, there's a lot of fucked up people in the world. And then you just leave the museum and you've forgotten most of what you've seen, like the dissected horse, and it's a bad modern art display.
But I feel like
it doesn't really connect or tie into anything. It's just like walking through
but the mind
modern
doesn't always work that way. That's what I feel like. I feel like this movie has a million excuses about why it can get away with stuff that everyone else in the world can plainly see what it's trying to do and what it's trying to be, but it technically has excuses to do it.
It reminds me of when I went to the Art Institute of Chicago, and they have a modern art wing. And I'm not going to rip on all modern art, because I go through the modern art wing, and there's some things I'm like, wow, this is really cool, this really speaks to me. And then you get about maybe at least 50% of the shit in there that you're just like, nah, this is garbage. Like, total garbage, and some idiot at the Institute paid money to have this on display. Like, it's just ridiculous. But I remember, like, there were a couple things where it's just, like, one was, like, a display of, like, a baby hanging by a string, and there's, like, an anchor on the ground, and it's like, this is 9/11. Like, I'm not making this up. Like, so you get shit like that, and then there's my favorite there was another one where it was just this dark room and some guy dressed as a clown with a porno mag sitting on the toilet just fapping, just and if you walk through all of that in about 20 minutes and then just watch an episode of CSI, there's the cell.
Yeah.
That's it. It's my experience at the Modern Art Wing of the Art Institute crossed with watching a shitty episode of CSI on the way home.
Well, and what I felt this film, I remember we talked about this when it first came out too, is that the contrast between reality and the world inside his mind, there's not that big a contrast. I feel that's a big missed opportunity, because if you have, like, the real world, something like Silence of the Lambs is kind of gritty and kind of, like you almost feel like you're really there, and then you go inside the world of his mind and it is also real and weird.
That would have been more
dirty.
interesting.
How much more interesting
But
would that have been?
his reality is so beyond bizarre. His, like,
no, even the way it's
stringing
shot. It is shot like how it's shot in the dream world. And when you have
stringing
these
himself
big
up,
stars,
drowning the woman in the giant tank. Where do you get a tank that? Like, this is so many things where I'm like, his normal life is so bizarre that it just it's like, okay, so his imagined life is just a little screwy, but not by much.
Even in Silence of the Lambs, when you see Buffalo Bill's, a little dungeon area and stuff like that, I mean, that's a pretty bizarre life and pretty bizarre mind, but it's shot kind of like you're there looking at it, and it feels dark and it feels uncomfortable.
And the thing is, it feels dark and uncomfortable because it's not like he built himself a real dungeon. It's just a shitty basement.
Well, I mean, even
like that's
down
what
to,
makes it creepy,
even,
like with just a fucking pit.
Well, and even down to, you know, like what they wear when they go inside his mind. Even though those suits look cool and dreamlike, there's no reason for them to look that way.
Oh, they just want a cool production.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. There should be that separation, because then we go inside that world, it's like, oh, it's so different and so weird. It's like in The Exorcist.
Like
we always said in Exorcist, we like, you know, there's an extra scene they added where the girl goes outside the room, and we said, no, we like that room was the scary place. When you go in there, it's like entering
it's a
hell.
different world.
And that was something where I feel they really missed that in this, and it could have been really interesting, because this is a great idea, in my opinion. And the idea of literally go inside a killer's mind. When I saw the poster, even when I saw the trailers, I'm like, this sounds like a brilliant idea. I can't wait to see what they do with this. And then when you also have these stars, even if they're, let's say they weren't big names at the time, you know, or whatever, they look like they're big stars. It looks like the classic cop that's just smoking the cigarette, brushing his teeth in the office, the nice psychiatrist who just wants to talk, but, oh, this big creepy mind, and the people, you know, they're just helping, like, you know, I need you here. No, don't you understand? Exposition, exposition, exposition. And then the cliche killer. You know, so you never feel like it's a contrast between this fantasy world in his mind and this real world, because you are never in the real world. And I would argue you're never even fully in the dream world either. You're constantly interrupted by either what is trying to be said or what's being excused as trying to say something.
I just felt no connection to any of the characters, including the woman he's gonna kill, who just... It's just some random character, just, okay, and he's gonna slowly drown her in the... And you kind of watch it just like, okay, like, you know,
Sucks.
she's gonna make it out, like,
Even, okay, again, I hate to keep going back to this, Sounds of the Lambs. The girl in that pit, I felt like she had
was
so
amazing.
much personality.
Precious, are you up there? You little shit!
Yeah, you little shit. You want this dog? You better come down to you.
Yeah.
I just felt like there was and
that scene too, where she sees like the fingernails broken off on the side of it, and she's like, ah, and the bubble was like, way more interesting than anything we got here.
Yeah.
Like,
it's. I hate to keep going back to that, but let's be honest. The cell kept going back to it, so I think we can.
Yeah,
too.
no, they literally just kept cutting back to it as if just like, hey, just a reminder, I guess there's a point to this shit. Like,
I kind of feel like, you know, actually a good comparison, again, kind of in the same realm, Sounds of the Lambs versus Hannibal. Hannibal is a completely different film
that movie
than
either.
Sounds of... Oh, no,
Hannibal,
it is,
the
but
first
that's what I'm
half's
saying.
good, and then it falls
but
apart.
even then, from the beginning of the film, you know this is not Silence of the Lambs.
No, that's true.
This is an artsy, beautiful-looking film.
Actually,
I mean, it is,
it's the opposite. It's when that film is not being Silence of the Lambs, when it's in Florence and artistic and weird, that it's its best. When it goes back to Virginia, the movie just completely
But yeah,
implodes.
when it's trying to be a real serial killer movie, you know, it doesn't work because it's so in this different realm, and I think they're missing something when you need to.
The first part's like an
gritty, dark
Italian
reality.
horror film, and then it just turns into another serial killer movie. It's like, but with pigs. That movie was dumb.
So, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else to say about this movie. I mean, I think the majority of it is there. The
only thing I remember from it is.
I should do that's my favorite part of him in that movie. Everything else is him just going, oh, yeah, but that he's legitimately like, what the fuck are you right now? He's just singing his little song. Wouldn't you?
It's my favorite scene.
He is having so much fun.
Because at least it's
in that
entertainingly
scene.
bad.
Yeah. Oh, and then we gotta do that stupid thing where it's like, you know, your name is Dr. So-and-so, you have a kid named blah, 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 and like, they suddenly oh, that's me! And it's just...
yeah, okay, wait a second.
There's so many movie cliches to get in the way
serial
of
killer,
the seriousness and
I guess that's also what bothers me, is this serial killer is beyond fucked up, and yet this trained psychiatrist goes in and immediately just crumbles like a, you know... fucking house of, like, just topples like a house of cards, and it needs to be talked out by the cop whose only real function seems to be to chain smoke and drink. Like, I'm just like, really? Who's the trained psychiatrist here? Like, it just,
Yeah, I think there's something where even like when there is confrontation, it isn't I mean, how little is there of her really talking to him and then seeing visual representations of her looking around going,
I got it. I got it.
What do you got? What do you got?
I got it. This would have been a better movie if it was like something like fucking Clarice Starling or another like psychiatrist going into Hannibal's head. Because at least if it's two psychiatrists versus each other, I could see how one would really dominate the other. But I couldn't see it with these two characters. Because supposedly in the beginning it's like, oh, she's supposed to be like so good at this, and like I don't know.
Well, and pretty much all there is in this movie is that he got beaten as a kid, you know, and abused and stuff. It's like, that's really it. And we're supposed to be like, you know, oh, and she has to, whatever,
then again,
drown him or whatever at the end. It's like, oh, crying, but it's like, what? So he is beaten. That really sucks. But again, we can't connect it to who his identity is.
I guess, though, in the beginning, she got outwitted by the kid's psyche. I don't get how these like dream worlds work, where it's just like, you would think the adult who's got the better grip on their own brain would be able to like figure this out. But she gets like bested by a kid in the beginning, doesn't she? Like, she's in a kid's
kind of. It's like just the bad side of the brain, because that's what the movie's saying. Everybody just has a bad side that's eating the good side. Brilliant psychology. You got it.
It's just fucking Carl Jung for dummies. It's like there's a shadow self, and then they end their discussion there, and it's just.
But it's like,
I mean, you could totally like. Fucking in like Paprika, Inception, like there's a number of films and stuff that could like do this better. And have, honestly, that I will say the Cell's only contribution maybe this is it may have given other people an idea like, oh, I can do something like this, only it won't suck.
Yeah, like I can do this so much better.
So maybe I should give it some credit for doing that, because when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that was one of the earlier ones to do kind of this shit. It was just terrible at it.
I don't know, just the whole thing, I think, with the cliches, with the style, with the total lack of focus, everything I see in it does not point to, I really want to show you, you know, the mind of a serial killer and the background and the life and stuff. It's, I want to show you what I can do with something, and I want you to praise me for it. That's what I always see.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm saying, even if I'm wrong, even if this dude is a real nice dude and he really thought he was bringing something, that is how it comes across. And I think
so there was
that's
a failure
the problem
in execution one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, and whenever I say that, I'm not saying that's what the person is like. I don't know what the person is like, but I'm saying that's how it comes across. I think that's a failure on the film.
I think this is a problem with this type of movie and genre, which is, I bet if you talk to most behavioral psychologists or behavioral profilers, they will tell you the inside mind of a serial killer is probably not as fascinating as you would think. It's probably just a lot of sexual perversion and just getting their jollies from, you know, manipulating people and killing people. But it's like this sort of highly insane, artistic, imaginary fantasy world with the medieval paintings and I feel like that would probably be more rare. I think most times they're just probably thinking like, how can I get my sexual jollies by strangling this girl or stabbing her in the back or like.
I feel like
that's what I tend to think it's probably gonna be. So this makes this type of movie from the beginning. It's kind of troublesome because like, let's go in the mind of a serial killer. It's like, okay, I don't think it's gonna be as interesting to non-serial killers.
I think there's something where it's like they really wanted to go like abstract, like an abstract style or movie. You know, you have to get rid of these cliches we see a million times and these beautiful people chasing other beautiful people and stuff. I think you need like, you know, a David Lynch or a Stanley Kubrick or somebody that can really go abstract and not be like, this equals this. Now here's some weird abstract. Now this equals this. And now we're back to the real world, just something where it is legitimately confused, you know, in a way that's intentional, in a way that, you know, blending reality and the dream world can actually overlap in a way that maybe you never thought of before and can't really explain. Here, it's so easy to explain. It's so easy just to point, okay, we're doing abstract. Okay, this means something. Okay, now this part of the real world is supposed to be like this part of the dream world. And it's just so clear. That I feel like if you got someone that really was going to take more chances and kind of blur that line more in a way that's not as obvious and not as spelled out for you, it
just comes to no effect. I hate movies like, if you're going to, if you're just going to make a torture porn, then fine. Make a torture porn and do what you do. And at least you could say, okay, this is just some cheap exploitation torture porn film. If you're going to try to make it something better than that, then it has to mean something or come to some effect. This just seemed like a giant waste of time to me. And that's why, like, I know Ebert was just like, oh, visually it's really interesting and this and that, but he also gave Phantom Menace 3.5 stars. It was like, visually it's really interesting and all that. So, this is why I tell people, like, it's not our job as critics to tell you always, is the movie objectively good or not? We're just telling you our opinion of the film, and this is one of the reasons why, because, like, I learned from Ebert that I'm like, okay, he is a sucker for hard candy. He has a hard-on for visuals to a point that, you could throw a piece of shit on screen, and he gave The Haunting remake 3 stars.
Yeah, because he loved how it looked.
Now, to be fair, he was a little more honest with, I'm just really recommending it for the house.
But no, he's usually pretty honest about that stuff.
I know, there's some reviews where I had to figure it out early on where, because sometimes he wouldn't mention it, and I had to figure it out. I'm just like, okay, this is how he works. This is his brain. And I'm sure people were just like, oh, well, you said this and I think you're wrong. That's fine. Watch us consistently if you want to trust our opinion for some godforsaken reason. It's your job to watch us consistently and figure out basically how our brains are working and how it meshes with yours. And if you're just like, well, they normally like this type of movie and I don't, file that away. And if we like that sort of movie again, you'll be like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't see it. And there was a certain series of films that Ebert liked where I would see certain cues in the writing, just like, oh, visually it's really interesting, and oh, it shows me things I haven't seen before, where I'm like, and if there's no mention of story along with that, or the story's alright, I'd be like, okay, this probably isn't gonna be a movie for me. Well,
what I like about a good critic is that whether I agree with them or not, or like something they dislike or something, is that a good critic, I think, can give you a new point of view you haven't thought of. Like, I can read something, maybe I was confused about something, I've read someone else's work, I'm like, oh, like, I never thought of that side to it. Or even if I'm watching something that, like, I love but someone really hates and they explain why, in a way I'm like, I never thought of that angle. That's actually really intriguing. So that's what I like when somebody can do that. So even if there is a critic that, you disagree with a lot, I think we both disagree with Ebert on a lot of stuff, I think he could offer a point of view that suddenly made me go, oh, okay, that's actually really
and there were times where he said things about films where I agreed with him totally, and I had a new appreciation for the film because of it.
Yeah, even better than I can explain him far better. But yeah, this was not one of them. Yeah, no. This was one we just saw and went.
This is one where I'm just like, he's getting old, man. He's going out of his mind. I don't know. Between this, because this, I think, and Phantom Menace were not that far apart. I was starting to wonder, and I was like, okay, maybe I just need to readjust my opinion of Ebert here. And
well, he did say that, like, I feel like I'm alone on this. Like, nobody else likes this movie, but, I think it's one of the best of the year. Yeah. And it's like, if that's
to be fair, that's fine with him. The Phantom Menace was the big tease for me, where I saw that movie.
No, but every critic was, like, kind of praising that when it came out.
Oh, I know.
Remember? Yeah.
But then this is where it gets interesting, because then in the second film, where he's just like, well, and the acting's wooden and stiff, and I'm just like, where were you on the first one?
I think the hype faded after that.
Because I think because Attack of the Clones he didn't like. Yeah, he didn't like Attack of the Clones. He only liked Sith a little bit better, and I'm just like, but Phantom Menace is the 3.5 star movie. Okay.
I get a feeling he looks back on that too, just like, this is pretty exciting. New Star Wars movie. Come on.
So far back here.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, that's our thoughts on The Cell. If you like it, great. Not for us, man. Definitely not for us.
I'll mute that great to just if you like it.
So, this is me and Rob saying,
If you like it, I'll acknowledge you exist. I won't actively hunt you down. You just want to go out on a hunt, don't you?
Yeah. See if we can do it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Not doing it.
Dick.